Hi, welcome to Integrate or Die. I'm Steve Hunt.
And I'm Jordan Katz.
This week we spoke with Sujit Karp, who works for iMocha Technologies, which is a skills management company. And Sujit has been in this area of skills management for longer than most people. So he brought some really interesting perspectives. What are some of the things that you took away from this conversation, Jordan?
Well, first of all, incredibly interesting conversation about skills management, skills cataloging. But what I really valued about this conversation was not just thinking about replacement. So if someone leaves with skills, how do you get those skills back? But forward looking. How do you think about, I have to launch a new initiative. What skills do I need? I have to change the way my company operates, or I'm growing, or something's different in the future. How do I think about skills before I start working on that effort in order that I increase the likelihood of success? Really enlightening conversation.
Yeah, and I think sort of building on that, I shared how he said the skills data that we got now largely came out of learning, and learning is kind of reactive. It's like, what do we need to
Yeah.
teach people? And saying, but we need to get ahead of that. And he talked about sort of making skills data more widely accessible, not just to companies, but to employees and candidates, because the more people understand about the skills they have, but also the skills that are needed, the more they can sort of map up with their own careers, proactively map out workforce planning, and this idea of getting it out of sort of the historical like Excel spreadsheets where it was
Mhm.
kept and making it widely available to everyone and the impact that's going to have on not just companies, but just work in general and labor markets. So let's give a listen to Sujit. Hey, Sujit, welcome to Integrate or Die. Thank you so much for appearing on the show. We always start by telling our guests why we invited them to be on this show and sort of what we think your area of expertise is, and then you can tell us. So, you know, the expertise that you do at iMocha is really around skills intelligence, skills management, which is a big area right now, and you're definitely one of the leaders in really thinking about how can we use technology to better manage skills and focus more on skills. So that's why we wanted to hear what you're doing and your take on HR technology. But is that a good description of your expertise? What do you consider yourself an expert in this area?
So I would just hey, thanks, Steve, and thanks, Jordan, for inviting me. So I
Pleasure.
can like and why do first of all thing I would answer this question. Why do I think I'm an expert from your perspective because you invited me? So so the story starts like long back. This is my second startup which I've started. The first was like a consulting company in technology. Built that company over a period of 5 years and then exited in 2012. Always faced a lot of challenges with hiring people with the right skills. And it was always a little chaotic. So then after that, took a break for 2 years thinking what really we need to build. And when we started iMocha in the year 2015, the focus was on can we solve this problem of hiring around and can we hire people with skills rather than the degrees, rather than the educational background they come up with. So we started with skills assessment for talent acquisition in 2015. That evolved into today a skills intelligence for talent acquisition, talent management, talent mobility. So I've been like last like 20 years of experience, last 10 years into HR tech. And the entire in last 10 years, the focus what I've seen a lot of transformation in the HR tech space. Uh, but the one thing which has remained always constant, what I've seen is skills. First, skills were attached to a job role. Now the people talk in the skill first world, people are talking about attaching skills to the employees or the people, right? And I always thought whether the whatever happens, right, past, current, or future, right, with AI, well, we don't know what's going to be the next in the technology innovation. But two things I will think always remains constant. One is people, and second are the skills they own. And the world of HR tech is going to revolve around this.
Wow, that's you're after my own heart with that. I always talk about the one constant about work is this is people and the psychology of people. It's when you talk about skills management and that iMocha started in 2015, you're actually one of the very first of the new modern age of skills like ontology, machine learning enabled technologies. I think I didn't realize that your company started that long ago. But skills management, as you pointed out, that is probably the oldest form of talent management. I can't remember exactly, but something like in the like the 3rd century BC, the Chinese Empire was doing formal skills assessments for government jobs. So skills management
Wow.
has been around for a long time. To your point, it's one of the few constants. When you look at solving this problem, how has modern technology enabled us to do this better? I mean, what are you excited about in terms of what you're able to do and sort of made you think I'm going to try to solve this problem? And I also love that you came at it from you had it in your own job with consulting companies. I mean, what made you say, hey, we can do this better? What is it about the technology that's enabling us to do this, to handle this problem better than the past?
So I would say technology evolves. We have seen evolution of many technologies, a simple like a mobile handset, right? Having landline phones to having mobile handsets to in the year 2007 when Steve Jobs launched a smartphone, right? A real
Mhm.
smartphone. So in the same thing, I would say the HR tech has evolved. The first, the HCM or the HRMS system, the system of records, you need to have that in place. Then uh, I would say one of the best things what I have seen in the last decade is the e-learning. In the year 2015, with the inventions into the smartphone and the telecom, the data easily available, the learning was made democratized for everyone. You can take courses in any part of the world. And I guess that's the reason the skill first started because learning became so easily accessible. You don't have to go and enroll yourself into a university to learn something, right?
Mhm.
Became easily accessible. So there is a technology evolution which keeps on happening. I would say today, when I see the future, because of the last couple of decades of all the data being in place with the HCM systems, with the LMS systems, and with the e-learning, where the learning is happening so fast that the transition is happening fast, and with the data in place, companies or organization want to know that with this fast change happening, what is the insights which I can take for my business?
Mhm.
What positive impacts I can have for the future of work, for the future of organization, also for the future of people. And I guess that's where the skills intelligence or skills data management becomes super critical because there's so many systems generating data, storing data, but making a meaning out of that is challenging. Like I can
Mhm.
give you an example. I was talking to one of the HR leaders of a multi-billion dollar organization in Europe, a healthcare company. And I was talking to her. She was the director. She is the director of L&D. And she told, I said, what is the biggest problem? And she said, we have multiple HR tech systems we have invested in the last couple of decades, but they all run in silos. Everybody has
Mhm.
a different definition of skill. Everyone is having a different taxonomy, ontology, and we don't have a real-time analytics flowing. Today also
Mhm.
we get data from all the systems, put it in into Excel, do the analytics, but everybody's talking about different definition of skills.
Yeah.
I guess now the people have realized because the data is generating so fast and the variety of data and the velocity of data that if they don't have the right skills data management, right skills definition, they would not get the right insights at the right time to take the right actions, right? And that's where I see the need for innovation, right? And they say necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And that's why the skills intelligence or skills data management is become of that picking up that rhythm for last couple of years.
I really like. I never really thought about how you said the explosion of learning kind of was really a big part of this. Is suddenly learning becoming very accessible due to mobile devices, due to like massive online open courses, all these other things. We suddenly have learning content, which is basically about skills. What are we learning? We're learning skills. And then combined with all these platforms that we had, do core platforms to store data. So these two things happen in context, but now we have this issue where there's so much data. How do we pull it together? We have a platform, we have the skills content. So when you look at this, before we talk about what you're working on right now, because you said 2015, so you've been at this for a while. What is a feature or functionality that you say this is proven and done in this area of skills management? You're like, how come every company doesn't do this? Because there's the more advanced ontology, some of that stuff is pretty sophisticated, but is there stuff that you're just like, looking at, you're like, hey, we've had this since 2017. How come everyone isn't using it? What would that be? What would be like just the basic stuff that you're like, come on, people, use this?
So this is like in conversation I was with this talent advisory group of Randstad recently, and I was talking to them, and I used a term, taxonomy as a service,
Mm-hmm.
and they said it's interesting. What do you mean taxonomy as a service? I said taxonomy is just a definition of skills, right? And if that is in place in a very nice way, that can be provided as a service to multiple organization, and within an organization that can be a layer with which they can build all their systems, right? With that simple definition. And I always thought it's so easy to build a taxonomy as a service, and why people are not using it, right? And what I did is I actually went out to all the companies who provide taxonomy.
Mm-hmm.
I did an inquiry with one of the large, I'll not take the name, with the large consulting firms
Mm-hmm.
and big fours, and I asked them, how do you provide taxonomy to your customers? One of my customers having it and one has a need, and how it, and they said, we do this exercise over a month, understand the things and all. It's a big consulting, and then we will provide you it in the Excel files. I said, great. But if it's in the Excel files, then how does it get updated real time? And they said, no, it's a one-time exercise we do and we give it to this. Then I went to a couple of providers who sell taxonomy, and they said we provide it into Excel files. Then somebody said we provide it through APIs. And then I just thought it's like the concept of taxonomy is there, but providing it in a right way and having a refresh thing. So can there be a taxonomy as a service in a software as a service, like a SaaS solution,
Mm-hmm.
where they say there's a taxonomy, but there's a new taxonomy which gets, if there's any new skill which is coming, it gives a nudge to the company. Okay, this new skill has been introduced. But an interesting thing, this is a skill, and this skill, maybe example, let's take generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to impact this capabilities in the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And if these capabilities are matched to these roles, all those roles may get 20 or 30% automated. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not about a company which is providing a taxonomy telling that there's a new skill introduction.
Mm-hmm.
But because of this new skill introduction, what is the impact it's going to have? If they
Mm-hmm.
can provide that in the software as a service, right? Maybe it's an amazing and easy intelligence. People can pick it up and then start using it. If you just tell me there's some new skills added, good. I got to
Mm-hmm.
know, but what should I do? Right?
Wow.
I'm
That makes
I'm
that
curious
makes
to
a
know.
oh,
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
no, go ahead, Jordan.
Okay, I'm curious to know. So, how do HR departments or internal, employee strategy units take action as a result of this information? Right, like you're getting a feed of what skills are occurring. You're getting a feed of different. Um, you're getting a feed of different information about what skills are happening in their relation to different jobs. How do you take that and do something about it?
So I would, and we have built this into the product, but I'll just forget about a product. I'll just
Yeah.
tell you in a layman's term, right? If there is any skill which is coming, right? Your
Yep.
first question would be, what I use skills to perform a particular job. It's a job to be done. And I consider a job to be done as a capability for a particular role.
Yeah.
So this skill can be used in which job? And for that job, what is a job to be done? This skill helps me to automate, increase productivity, increase efficiency, or completely new thing. Let's say a CEO of auto company just said in Europe that we would have a net carbon zero emission by 2030, right? So if it's a net carbon zero emission, so then let's talk about the sustainability skills or green skills.
Yeah.
So if there are an introduction of a sustainability skills or green skills, then which are the roles in the organization which has a job to be done? Because of this, it's going to get impacted. So if you tell me that this is a set of green skills, okay. But if you tell me this is the set of green skills which impacts this job to be done, and this job to be done are related to the just job profiles, then that would be an enormous amount of easily accessible data to me. And I call this as a taxonomy as a service, or
Got it.
to a further level, ontology as a service, right?
Mhm.
And I don't have to really have a big four consulting firm doing a large
Mhm.
exercise and coming and telling me, oh, this is how it's going to happen. It's only that this information available in a blog is nice to read. But
Yeah.
this information available in a software and correlating it to your capabilities and correlating it to your job to be done and to the jobs makes an immense sense, because then you're connecting a dot. I can read a blog, but when I get into my work, I don't know how to apply that blog into my work.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what are the risks if you don't know that information? So let's say you're a big company and you have no idea, and you're not cataloging any of the skills, and what's the downside?
I would say the biggest downside is your CEO giving a statement that will be a net carbon emission zero by 2030.
Yeah.
And then that vision needs to be transformed into reality. And
Yeah.
then you have a roadmap from today for next 6 years. And if
Yep.
you really, because if you have to transform a company, you can only transform two things. You can
Mhm.
transform culture and you can transform skills, right?
Got
These
it.
are the more things. Everything else,
Yep.
you want to transform the machineries and everything in the company, it's very easy. But to this are
Yep.
two difficult things. Now, as a HR leader, somebody has a purpose to transform the culture. Now, here there is a purpose for somebody to transform the skills of the people.
Yeah.
And if the person doesn't know what does this mean, because he's unaware or she's unaware as an HR leader, right? Then if she's unaware and tomorrow after 2 years, the CEO asks me, oh, great, where are we with the transformation?
With our
It's
skill.
like it's only 4 years to go.
Yeah.
And then I say, I don't know.
How much carbon
Versus,
emissions have we
yeah,
reduced? Like none.
Yeah.
yeah, versus I, instead of that, I go and say, oh, well, as per your vision, for things to change, there are some 100 new skills our people need to adopt.
Yeah.
This is the list of 100 skills. It's going to impact this job to be done. This job to be done is done by this people in the organization today. I'm tracking this on quarter to quarter. This is how the change is happening. We have already done 10% change. This year, we are going to do another 20% change. We are on track to make sure we achieve that vision. What will happen if this you don't do it? Another option is very easy. Oh, I missed it. I don't know how to do this. Let me hire a big four consulting company to do this. They will come, they will do all the research, give you multi-million dollar contracts. You do it, and then you do it in a haywired manner, and you are still, maybe you will achieve it with a lot of chaos around,
Yeah.
and which is huge cost.
Yeah, there's so many things that you're touching on here. I kind of want to like summarize for you. First of all, that
Yeah.
going back to the taxonomy as a service. So what I'm hearing is you're like, look, I'm guessing you use machine learning and natural language parsing and all those sort of things, which have been around for a while. I think people have realized that most of the mathematics for large language models is not new. I mean, it's been refined, but I I built ontologies like 20 years ago. They just took forever to build because the technology was so slow. But now, we have much faster processing speeds, as you pointed, because of the explosion of things like learning. We have much more data to do it. So the first thing is get off the Excel spreadsheets and start using what would be an intelligent machine learning enabled tool to manage your taxonomy over time. And somebody once told me Excel spreadsheets are the enemy of HR integration. So that's the one thing that I heard. I do think that your point about the role-based permission, tying it to roles, although I think that raises a whole nother, which could be a whole different podcast, Jordan, which is another thing I'm always amazed is how many companies don't have clear role architectures.
Yes.
They'll have like, well, we have 10,000 employees and 11,000 job titles.
Oh, this is interesting. Actually, I was talking to a large insurance company, and they liked what we are doing in skill data management. And the same thing they said, okay, we'll do that later. Our biggest challenge is we have 7,000 employees and we have 3,000 job titles.
Oh God.
Can you help us streamline this as a phase one?
Mhm.
Right? And that's interesting. That's what you're saying, 11,000
Yeah.
employees, and here you're 7,000 employees and 3,000 job titles.
Oh my God.
Well, and I think when you start doing that skills, though, you start realizing how jobs are similar when you start looking at it from a skill perspective. Because if you think of what a job description is, it's a bundling of tasks and skills. That's what it is. I mean, it's just they tend to be outdated and they tend to be people, they're not well managed. So I think that by implementing this a better skills taxonomy as a service, you said, you're going to define better job description. The other thing that you just touched on, though, that I'd never really thought about was skills. No, don't just enable what people are able to do. They also enable how people think about the world. So, for example, if you are a company that has nobody that has skills in, let's use your example, generative AI, you're never going to think about using generative AI to change what your company does because you're not going to know it's even possible. You know, so, and I think that's certainly too when companies on the flip side too, I think a lot of times companies don't realize how much their employees know, and they bring in outside consulting firms that don't really understand their business at the level their employees do, and these consultant firms make all these decisions without like leveraging the expertise in the company. You know, I think it's both of those things. So I think it's really interesting the implications of getting a really good understanding of what do people in this company actually know how to do. You know, so well, talking about going to the next one. So you're saying the previous one, what every company should do is look, we have the technology, we've had it for a long time to go away from these Excel spreadsheets to more dynamic, constantly learning and evolving skills taxonomies. What are innovations that you're working on right now that you're going, okay, we should get there, but what's the next thing? If a company says, all right, we've got that implemented, what's next? What are you working on now that you're really excited about?
I would say the what evolution I've seen in the last 5 years. Okay, in the last there's a huge amount of work done in the NLP space in the last 40 years from a technology perspective. Before we go to an HR tech, let's talk on the tech part. And we have also invested heavily into NLP. But the LLMs,
For those of you who may not know, that's natural language processing.
that's a fact, yes. and with the understanding of the entire generative AI, which people understand, or the large language models, it has completely, I would say, overpowered that 40 years of research, right? So LLMs are much more powerful than what you would do with an NLP today, right? And that's where the entire generative AI is becoming so powerful. So the next thing is, maybe if I have to find out on a real time, a very simple thing is like giving a related skills, like as you said, rather like the employees currently, can I help them with the right insights on what are the related skills, one, they should get into, second, the related jobs, and the related jobs with a lot of analysis or machine learning, and based on that, what are the related skills they should learn, matching that with the courses from the e-learning, right, to make their life easy. I would say making this data easily accessible to the organizations and then indirectly to the employees at a much faster and a easier adoptable pace is very important. Is this done in the past? It's done in the past, right? But it's all about the right adoption. It's just like what Henry Ford did with cars, right? Before that, before the Ford Motor Company, if you ask today anybody how many car manufacturers are there in United States, and they would say 10, worldwide maybe 50. Do you know how many car manufacturers were there in the 18th century? Maybe in 1880, 1890.
Guessing a lot, but very small.
Right. They were like 20,000.
Oh,
Wow.
Because there would be a Boston Motor Company. Okay, there would be a New York Motor Company, because the cars would go and they didn't had a longevity, right? Every weekend you would have to take it to a mechanic to fix it. They would run for a couple 1,000 kilometers and they would break down. So many motor companies locally. But what happened when a Model T came, right? It made the entire thing much more scalable and easily accessible for the common man. So I would say now from the HR tech perspective, there's a lot of tech and there are a lot of taxonomy, ontology, the related adjacent skills, the related job profiles, which eventually help into the internal mobilities where there's So there are two things I would say. There's an application layer, I say, where there's an applicant tracking system, there's a LMS, there's a LXP, there's an internal mobility, succession planning. But
Mhm.
all these things need a very, very good data to work intelligently. And
Mhm.
there comes the skills data management. So from the innovation perspective, we are saying we are not, personally, I'm not going to get into the application layer at all. Just
Mhm.
focus on the skills and focus on making this data easily accessible, like a Model T car or like a Corolla, efficiently available, right?
Mhm.
Like the Toyota Corolla or a Toyota Camry, very efficient cars, right?
Yeah.
This kind of a innovation is needed today, that making this data easily accessible to the different application layer of the HR tech ecosystem, and providing the easy analytics rather than in Excel, but at a single place, and empower or enhance this application with the right skills data management. So I've coined a term, and that is called as a skills intel chip. So the innovation is creating an skills intel chip,
Mm.
You tell
which
the
can
chip,
chip, right?
yeah, chip.
Intel, right? Which
Yeah.
can empower any computer in the world. So IMOCA, from an innovation perspective, I think would be a skills chip, an Intel
Mhm.
chip, which can empower any application, human capital management, internal mobility systems in the world.
It's interesting because you're saying by having this more detailed data about skills, like it has huge impacts, or it could, on compensation, for example. That if you really knew people's capabilities, the market value of their skills, if they knew that, certainly has on learning. When you get to a more detailed level, it allows us to change how we staff jobs, how we hire jobs, how we pay jobs, how people get trained if we have this more detailed level. The one thing that you're saying too is about the democratizing. If we had these tools, as we get more information on what skills matter, finding a way to get it in the hands of individual employees. Because I'll give you an example. One of my nephews taught himself Python, and it's
Mm.
completely changed his career trajectory. He was a software sales guy, and he's like, kind of bored. And then, and now he's, of this analytics person his whole career. But it's because he taught himself Python, and I don't know if I influenced that or where he got the idea, but I think if there was a way to provide more people knowledge of what skills that they would need, would sort of open up doors for them and give them access to it. Uh, I think that's really powerful. It's because something we lack right now. If you look at most of the taxonomies and things like that, they're sort of outdated. And by the time people realize skills are valuable to learn, sometimes it's sort of like, well, that was really valuable like 4 years ago. So how to keep that updated. That's really interesting. Skills IntelliChip. So what about like failures? This is one of the things when we started this show, where like you've been doing this for a long time now. You've probably, I talked to a lot of people. Everyone's talking about skills now, but you've been talking about skills for like 10 years. When you look at this, what are the failures when you look out there? What are things where you're like, okay, I'll tell you what doesn't work. Maybe because you've tried it yourself or you've seen it. Are there things where companies are looking at this whole area of skills technology that you're like, that's not the right way to go about it. It's not going to work, or it's a waste of time.
So, and this is a good question. The failures, because that's sometimes it looks very, something which looks very easy, right? Or seems very
Mhm.
easy, is actually not very easy,
Mhm.
right? So we started as a skill assessment company for talent acquisition. In 2019, I remember the digital transformation leader for Ericsson. She was based out of Sweden. They were our existing customer. She came. Can we use IMOCA skill assessment for uh, internal employees for L&D? That's how we got into the talent management side on assessment. And then few more companies came, and then we had 12 customers within like less than a year using us for L&D. And I saw some challenges. And then when I actually did a lot of survey with the employees, I realized asking an employee to give an assessment to find out what is the proficiency level is actually you challenging or you doubting an employee's ability within the organization. A
Mhm.
person is working in the job, doing well, and then still you're asking the person to give an assessment to just know what is the proficiency. So
Mhm.
while assessment looks very simple, but employees had a resistance to it. They thought that you are questioning my ability. I'm doing good job, right?
Mhm.
And you're questioning my ability with this. So it was not taken very openly. It was not very welcoming from the employees, and there's a lot of resistance. To an
Mhm.
extent, I remember an employee, in one of the organizations, an employee saying that assessments look invasive in nature, which was a
Mhm.
very strong word, right?
Mhm.
And that's when that was the year 2020 when I started thinking, oh, if this is the problem, on one side, the HR leaders want to know about the skills, not only the skills, the proficiency of every skill with an employee. Okay. On the other side, and they all think assessment is the easiest way to do, but employees don't want to do it. So where is the
Mhm.
gap, right? And then that was the biggest, I would say, failure, that just deploying assessment without understanding the employee's perspective and only understanding the HR or L&D leader's perspective was the biggest failure I saw, and we struggle with that. And because we failed in that, or I would say more than failure, it was a struggle. And when I talked to them, I realized maybe can we extract data
Mm.
about the work in the flow of work, and from that data can I find out the proficiency, and then go to an employee, oh, we have built an intelligent skills profile for you. These are the skills which you have acquired in the last 1 year in the flow of work, and this is the proficiency. Would you like to just validate saying, is this right or wrong? And then we saw that was a big change, because now you're not actually challenging them, but you're telling, I've done something for you. It's just like wearing the smartwatch, right?
Mhm.
It's like you telling a smartwatch every day, how much did you eat? How much did you walk? How much did you sleep? And then it provides you analytics. We'll do once, we'll do it twice. Every day you'll say, leave it, right?
Mhm.
But this smartwatch tracks my steps, my sleep
Mhm.
automatically. Then once in a day, I go and look at it. Oh, good work. It's working.
Mhm.
So it's like more of an validation of what the data is gathered versus a feeding in the data. So on the same lines, we thought, how can we create intelligent employee skills profile? But now we are successful in that. And then the entire concept of taxonomy as a service, ontology as a service, we started refining that towards it. So the failure, I would say, or a struggle was deploying assessments for employees without understanding the perspective of employee who thinks he's being assessed. Assessed for what is the question.
Yeah, that's a
Do you
really good. Go ahead, Jordan.
do you see companies taking advantage of this with, like, I would call it proactive talent mobility? So let's say you're running your analysis and your employees have given you input into their skills, and you see an employee or two that just have, they're good at their job, but they have skills that could place them totally tangentially away, right? Do you see companies that are agile enough and advanced enough to say, hey, John Smith, you are currently a salesperson, but we also see that you have, in your spare time, you're a Python expert. Move into this other section and move it. How does it work the other way? Like we talked about, and oftentimes we talk about talent mobility being driven from the employee themselves. I learned a new skill so I can go do something else. Does it ever come back the other way around?
I would say yes, that once you provide this data in a proper way, it can enhance talent mobility in a much better way, right?
Yeah.
So talent mobility, I always think talent mobility is a workflow, right? For
Mhm.
deploying person from one job to another, or understanding the demand and the supply, right? But if you
Yep.
can provide a proactive intelligence of a skills data to a talent mobility application layer, it can
Yeah.
create wonders for the organization. And that insights can be given to the HR leaders as well as to the employee, right? The art of
Yeah.
possibility. So we, because we do a lot of work in the banking and financial services, so we are doing a study project with PwC on the impact of the financial skills. And over there, There are few job roles, like as per the Singapore skills framework for banking, which is one of the most widely used skills framework for banking in the world. There are 6 job families and there are 160 job roles. Okay. Now, if I'm able to find out for this 160 job roles, the impact of generative AI, let's say a simple role, relationship manager in banking.
Yeah.
What is the impact of the generative AI on relationship banking manager for the next 0 to 18 months, 18 to 36 months, and 36 months to 60 months? Will it get 25% automated, 40% automated, or 80% automated? Or there is no, because of a lot of generative AI and intelligence directly flowing to the customers, maybe you don't require relationship banking manager, right? Now, the multiple scenarios, this to this. Can you plot the scenarios saying the impact of generative AI on this role in a particular region? Because every region would not behave in a particular same manner. United States versus Europe versus India versus China versus Southeast Asia versus Middle East. What is the impact? Same role, relationship banking manager, based on a Singapore skills framework. What is the impact over next 5 years for a different region? Now imagine there's a bank, a large bank, let's say Citibank, and you provide this data to them. This is a lot of proactive data. They would understand, oh, we have so many relationship banking manager, and this is what going to have a change over the next 5 years. That would help them to plan the talent mobility in a much better way rather than being reactive on a data which is only of last 3 months or 6 months. We are kind of planning out for the next 5 years. Now imagine if somebody that has done this for 160 job roles and providing this as a service to you, right? This is immense value.
Yeah, I think that idea of kind of giving people more understanding of what's likely to happen, so kind of getting ahead of the whole reskilling guidance and telling people these are the skills we're going to need more of, which, a lot of this has been around for a long time. I knew a company, United Technologies companies years ago, famously would give all this education to people, and they would actually tell people these are the job titles that we think we're going to need in like 7 years, and then they would fund people's education, which was at a much more macro level. This is like a long time ago, but this idea of being very transparent with employees about, hey, here's how we think the company is changing or the industry is changing, but now you're able to do it at a more fine-grained level beyond just job titles to specific skills. I want to go back to what you were talking about, this challenge of assessing employees, because I think it does come down to employees saying, hey, if I'm assessed, how's it going to help me? Are you going to use it to evaluate me and make decisions about me? And we tend to think negatively as humans about that. But I remember, like, early on with Success Factors, we used to talk about the employee profile as a way to get on the radar screen. And there was a story. There was it was actually, I remember one of our conferences where we actually had a customer. She had been like an administrative assistant. She'd gotten her accounting degree. She'd put it into our employee profile, new skill. And because of that, she worked in a regional office. The company did an internal hire, changed her life. And it was entirely because this technology enabled me to be discovered. I built this new skill, and and somebody I'd never met discovered I had it and said, great. So I think if we look at that, kind of how do we present that skills discovery? And I think what's really like interesting though is most assessment is we're going to come in and assess you. Maybe we want you to do self ratings, whatever. How you discover, Sujit, about you looked at data, and I'm curious what data it is you looked at, and then gave to an employee, said, this is what we think from your digital footprint, this appears to be your skill level, and then they validated whether or not it was right. So they were able to say, no, that's not right. Maybe I know more here. I don't know that. But it wasn't the company taking data from them and then telling them their skill level. It was you taking data, guessing their skill level, and them coming back and telling you whether it's right, which changes the sort of power dynamic. What data did you actually look at though to get that initial like evaluation of people's skills and proficiency levels?
So I would just explain a concept over here, okay, or a science behind this. The science is about there's a report by Deloitte on this, a nice white paper called as multi-channel skills validation. Okay, so let's understand from how many ways a skills can be validated. A simple thing is self-rating, But what is the problem with the self-rating? Self-rating is always aspirational. Nobody is going to rate a person himself or herself low. Second comes is manager's rating. Manager's rating is always biased. Jordan is a manager. Maybe Jordan loves Sujit and he doesn't like Steve. So he's going to rate you low.
Yeah. You stink, Steve.
And then there's a third thing. The third thing is assessment. But assessment is always a point in time. You may assess somebody in January, but what from January to December? The person's skills level is changing, but you assessed him only once. So that's a point in time. Now, the third thing is a person is doing some learning, which is mandated to the person in the organization. Let's say the learning is happening as a mandated training program, and there the person is learning. But that mandated training program were a good thought a few years ago. But with the entire e-learning and the courses available for like $5 and $10 on Udemy and Coursera, people are going and enrolling themselves and educating on their own, right? It's like the YouTube of the learning has evolved to a level and it's so much easily accessible, right? So people are learning on their own. So the fourth is the company mandated program. Fifth is people are learning on their own, right? The another thing is I'm just learning on the job, right? I am learning on the job and I'm learning from my peers. And there's this McKinsey principle of 70, 20, 10. 70% of the learning happens on the job. 20% learning actually happens through a lot of unstructured ways, right? Through your peers, to your friends and all. And only 10% learning happens through the mandated programs. And so there are some 8 to 10 different ways where a person keeps on acquiring skills. So now, if you can have this as a mechanism of 10 different ways, I'm not saying knowing no to assessment. I'm not saying no to self-rating. I'm saying let's have all of this in place in a much easier way to an employee. Example, I was talking to this L&D leader, and we had this amazing conversation in Paris recently, and the thought was very simple. You show skill to an employee, and you acquired the skill in the flow of work, and the proficiency level what we found that you have acquired is 6. The organization benchmark is 9, but you're almost there. Good. But the person says, no, hey, I'm not at 6. Don't challenge me. I'm 9. The person goes and change 9. Good. And then system gives a pop-up. Oh, wow, you rated yourself 9 and you're almost matching the organization benchmark because you move the needle from 6 to 9. We would like, can you quickly validate the skill with a small assessment, which will hardly take 10 minutes? Oh, then the person says, oh, I did it. So it's my responsibility to validate it now. So then the person quickly takes an assessment. So now the assessment is not forceful.
Yeah.
It's self-driven. The person changed the metric. That's why the assessment happened.
I love this because it's like a dialogue. You're making this account technology is more of a dialogue back and forth. I think I'm just looking at the this is like we're learning so much. It's so cool that this is why we do this. Is by Sujit. This is because talking to people that have just spent so much time focusing on these different areas of technology for improving workforce management. Stepping away from what you've built on, what do you wish when you're looking at this, that you're focusing on this work, that you wish somebody else would build? You're like, we've got our roadmap and our roadmap is totally full, but I'll tell you, if somebody else would build this, our solution would be a lot more powerful. Is there anything that you wish other people would build?
I would say I'm amazed with what the work, at least I've seen with the power of large language models, which have been built by Microsoft with OpenAI, Microsoft Azure with OpenAI, or maybe what Google or AWS, these companies are doing. Because without that power of LLMs, right, it wouldn't have been possible with making this data easily accessible to people, right? It's just like you're asking me a question that you're building a car. What would be the best thing that somebody would build for you? I would say it would be amazing if a company like a Bridgestone builds tires for me.
Right.
Making the things very simple, right? So it's going to be a nice, I would say, an ecosystem Like what I liked is really, I was really happy with at least the path which Success Factor took, right? So
Mhm.
SAP Success Factor was always job based. And when they
Mhm.
launched this talent intelligence hub, transformation to complete skills based, right?
Mhm.
I really like the vision of Success Factor. Like they're having this three modules in the talent intelligence hub. That is the job profile builder, the skills, and the third one is the growth portfolio. And the
Mhm.
skills are the attributes. Actually, those are the job profile builder, the attributes library, and the growth portfolio. The attributes library can have any skills from anywhere, and that can be attached to the employee, to the job profile and everything, right? So that transition of a company, of a Success Factor, from what they were to a talent intelligence hub, I that is something I would expect them to build, because whatever we are doing, if the ecosystem, whatever skill data management we are doing, if the ecosystem is not ready to take that intelligence of skills, right, at the
Mhm.
application layer, then we will struggle. Because we
Yeah.
are still, I said, we are a chip inside a computer. We are not building the computer. The computers are the Success Factor of the world, the workdays of the world. And then they transforming themselves into a skill-based structure would something I would really love. And even maybe anybody, I would say, if they do this job really well, right, the
Mhm.
final benefit is going to be with the to the customer.
I think, you know, what I'm just saying is, as you're generating, as we have these skills technologies that are generating much more rich data on skills, these other application technology platforms are saying being designed to ingest that data, to pull that data in. And that could apply across so many different technologies, where historically, I think these companies tried to do it themselves. And it's like, don't, you know, it's almost like in your car analogy that car companies should not try to build fuel, but when there's better fuel, it's like, okay, design your car to take this much higher quality fuel that we're gonna, but don't, but yes, kind of that focus. I think that's a great observation. Well, I'm gonna jump over first because I don't have time for a career guidance question. But I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask the last question, which is, what question did we not ask? What is a question that we all should be asking about HR technology? And the caveat is then we're going to ask you to answer it. So what is a question you think we should be thinking a lot more about in this field?
So I would say when I anybody is talking about HR technology or the HR tech, right? I would say for them to understand, or what you started with the career guidance, right?
Yeah.
So I would say the most important thing is before thinking about the HR, the technology part of it, right? Anybody who's trying to get into this and all should understand the life cycle of the talent, right? There is a candidate who comes, becomes an applicant, joins as an employee, exits the organization, becomes an alumni, and joins
Mhm.
you back as an employee again one day, right?
Mhm.
So while this happens, and we are a small startup, we are like hardly 200 people, but in last 3 years, there are 20 people who have rejoined the organization, right? Now, if you think this as a life cycle, now let's think about the HR technology. For the candidate, can have an amazing experience when the person joins. For the person to join, I need to focus on the employer branding. Maybe there's a lot of HR tech required over there. When a person joins in through an applicant tracking system, how can an amazing onboarding experience be provided, right? When a person, how can I build an amazing culture so that whenever the employee stays in the organization, he or she feels like it's the best part or the best time of my career.
Mhm.
When she leaves the organization, right? And that, because now she's a brand ambassador
Mhm.
everywhere. She's talking still about you. And she joining back to you one day, right? You have already, while she's leaving or he's leaving, you have actually created a talent pool for the future, right?
Wow. So
And
really
in
looking at this very holistically.
right.
Yeah.
And then this holistically thing, where does the HR tech fit in? Right? Are you going to digitize every process of this with the right data analytics, with the right systems, and still make sure you are still a being human, right? While you
Mhm.
digitize this process. And somebody like explained this very well. Just to summarize this, the ex CHRO, the first brown CHRO for Unilever Group around the world, Lena Nair. And she in 2019 said that every year we get 2 million applications for Unilever.
Mhm.
And this 2 million applications are not processed. And she said, I felt very bad because the people who are applying are my customers.
Mhm.
Somebody drinks a brew coffee, somebody uses a Dove soap, somebody has a Knorr soup, okay? Somebody uses a close-up paste in the morning. These are all
Yeah.
my customers. And they are applying to my organization. I cannot give a job to everyone, but I need to treat them well.
Mhm.
Now you need to digitize your process of the candidate experience of a talent acquisition. But while you're digitizing the process, the entire motive is, can you still be human to your customers and show empathy even while saying no, or show an empathy while they're joining the organization? To do this, what is the HR tech you would like to deploy?
I like that. I like that idea of don't
Me too.
forget that these are people, and that when we're building this technology, it's affecting people's lives. And then I think that's a great way to sort of sum it. And well, Sujit, thank you so much. This has been a fascinating conversation. I appreciate you appearing on Integrate or Die. And with
you, Sujit.
that, we're going to sign out. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Steve. And thanks a lot, Jordan. It was nice talking to you. Bye-bye.